your experience as a shoe tuber before we talk about specifically the shoes. So how many runs or how many miles does it take for you to really figure a shoe out?
Sometimes you know right away. Sometimes it's like after 5 minutes, you pretty much understand. I mean, it depends on the pace that you're running to do the testing in, and like what kind of run you're taking it out for. But sometimes you know right away, and I run more in it just to make sure, I'm not getting tricked by some early, maybe I got some extra endorphins going and all of a sudden I like the shoe more than I really it warrants, so just to be double sure.
This is the second half of the Kofuzi chat. It's all running shoe talk. If you missed the first half of that conversation about how Kofuzi has gotten faster at midlife, I will put it at the end of the video. Also, every time someone subscribes to this channel, a new runner gets their first carbon-plated shoes. So let's make the world 4% faster.
And I'm comfortable doing a lot of shoes, doing a review off of one run. A lot of my Instagram content, I write it that way, like first time running in this shoe, here's the early impressions. Here's some things that I'm still going to test it and I have questions about, but here's some early thoughts. But for YouTube, these days, I'm kind of waiting a little bit more to get more into it. And so typically I'll have like about 20 miles in a shoe before I do a review video. The video that I did today, that shoe had 40 miles in it before the video. So anywhere between there is a number. About 20 to 30 is where I feel comfortable. Like, all right, nothing weird's gonna happen. But sometimes there's a shoe, like I'll run 10 miles in it and I'm like, I really liked it in the beginning. And then at the end it got weird. And then I kind of forgot that it was weird and it was normal. So I don't know. So then sometimes you'll run them again. And then also you might have to be like, I didn't like it at these easy paces, but maybe this is an easy day shoe. Maybe this needs to be run faster. So you try to wait for another day on the calendar where you do have maybe you have a up-tempo run or a progression run, then you could try it on that day. So sometimes it takes 2 to 3 runs, but a lot of times I know after one. Maybe that's just because I've been doing it for a long time, but I feel like, the whole running shoe industry is based on the premise of you're going to go in, someone's going to tell you, hey, you should try this one on, and you don't even get to run in it. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, like it's sometimes people get mad if you're like, oh, you didn't put 100 miles in this before you even started talking about it. I'm like, I don't need, it's shoes. It's not that complicated.
Yeah, no, and it's still very impressive because I feel like when I get a shoe, there's a little honeymoon phase where I'm on it and I'm like, all the beauty and all the the best features. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah, this is great. And then the second run, it's like something about it. And it's like third run, start figuring it out. And it's like start picking up on all of those other features that are more nuanced that kind of come with the shoe. And it's like every time your reviews come out, it's like you include all those things. So I'm just like, man, he nailed this off like 13 miles, So that's it's
yeah.
awesome.
I mean, that might be like my superpower. I always just felt like, I don't know. I'm exceedingly average. I tell this to people all the time. I'm like average height. I have the average size. I'm reference size for shoes. I'm like the average size for a suit. Like things off the rack fit me because I'm exceptionally average. But I think that one of my superpowers is I can go from a 12 millimeter drop shoe to a 0 millimeter drop shoe and it doesn't bother me. Mm-hmm. I'll notice it, but it won't. Some people are like, no, you'll get injured, and I'm like, I don't. Mm-hmm. And then another is I just might be able to sense what I'm feeling in my feet. I don't know. I never thought of myself as having very sensitive feet or discerning feet, but maybe I'm able to just pick up on it.
That's cool. Do you have a preferred drop or does it matter to you?
I think it depends on the shoe. So I feel like one is like it's hard. The more accurate answer is it almost doesn't matter unless you tell me what the foam is. And so when all shoes were EVA, then heel drop was a very descriptive factor. It told you a lot about a shoe. But when most shoes are not just straight EVA anymore, I think that the heel drop is, and I've been saying this for years, the heel drop is one of the most overrated statistics or metrics that you could tell me about a shoe. It tells me very little. But I kind of have been noticing that like a lot of like the kind of like max cushion shoes that I like are about 6 millimeters of heel drop. That seems to be one that I kind of enjoy. I generally like race day shoes that are either 4 millimeter or 8 millimeter for some reason. I just don't know that they make a lot of 6 millimeter racing shoes, but 4 or 8 seems to be a good number. Again, it depends on the foam, depends on the carbon position. So that can be things, but those are ones that I I've noticed. Other than that, like daily trainers tend to be in the, like 8 or 10, and I don't really have a problem with that. But I've also run in 0 millimeter drop daily trainers, and I enjoy those too. So I don't really have a favorite drop, I guess is the long way of saying that.
So how many shoes do you test at any given time? Like how many are in your rotation right now that you're testing?
I mean, I think that like there are many that I'm kind of like testing, but there's shoes that I'm like actively testing. And I'd say that there's probably maybe like 4 or 5 at a time that I'm like really looking at, because then I'll like kind of prioritize. So as shoes come in, I usually go for a run in them to test them, or I might go for a couple of runs in the same week just so that way I can get that like first video out on it. And then if it's a shoe that I think is worth revisiting to try and get to that 100-mile mark for that longer term review, then that's one that I'll keep sprinkling back in. But if there isn't one that I find that is like worth devoting a ton of extra miles into it, then that shoe might like sit at like 30 miles for a couple of months until I feel like, oh, I've been overlooking this shoe. Let's go back and take a look at it, because maybe like a big burst of shoes came in at one time, and now I have a little bit more time to go back and look through what just came in. So it varies, but I'd probably say like actively there's like 4 or 5 that I'm like currently actually really running in. How long each of those shoes stays in the rotation is probably less than a month at a time.
Okay. Awesome. And then switching over to the trend of shoes in 2024, I just ran in the Takumi Sen 10 for the first time
Mm-hmm.
this morning, and I posted on Instagram. It was like 2024, from, and I've
Okay.
owned 2 pairs of the 8s. I love it. And I made a video talking about, how a lot of shoe companies have gone 4 quadrant in cinema. This is like appealing to men, women, children, old people. It's more accessible. The platform's a little wider. There's more stability, more support in the shoe. And in the Takumi's case, it's still a really good shoe, because if there's any shoe that could have used a little extra, it would be that, because it was a really narrow shoe. But are you a fan of where the shoes are trending as well, or do you kind of prefer a little bit less?
Yeah, I don't like the widening of shoes for the most part. I think in some shoes it makes a lot of sense. Max cushion shoes, if you're going to give me a lot of squishy foam, like make that footprint wide. That's fine. It makes a ton of sense. But I think to the extent that we're seeing it in a lot of other kinds of shoes, especially faster shoes, it feels annoying. It feels like you're diluting it, and I feel like what's happening is for a while we had this like proliferation of everyone wanted to compete with the Vaporfly because no one had a Vaporfly competitor. So you're like, make the fastest shoe you can. Designers go nuts. And then they did. And then they're like, all right, now we've got a competitor. Now let's sell more units of it. How do we make this more accessible to a wider range of people? And so then they're like, and you know what? People have been complaining about how these aren't that durable. So how do we change the durability so that they're better values? And I'm like, you just told them to make the fastest shoe possible. Now you're undoing that. And so like if making it more durable made it faster or a better performance product, they would have done that, but they didn't, because there's a reason. Because you can't have infinite durability and fast lightweight performance at the same time. They don't exist on the same ends of the spectrum. And so those things really annoy me a lot, because I feel like they're responding a lot of times to consumer complaints. And this is the reason why we can't have nice things, is because like we have these great shoes that were a great 150 mile of racing, another 50 to 100 miles of training, and then you get another one. Doesn't last as much as a Brooks Ghost. It doesn't last as long. But you know what? You'll have the best fun, fast miles of your life in them. That's the price that we're going to pay. I'm happy with that.
Hmm.
I'm happy to pay that. That's the compromise I'm willing to make. The compromise I really dislike is when like top end racing shoes from one year to the next become more durable, become more accessible. Not that I'm trying to gatekeep or anything like that, but like there are brands making multiple high end racing product that fit different race preferences. That's great. There's more runners in the market now than ever. Cater to all the subgenres, cater to all the sub demographics of people and what they want to race in, but don't make one racer that's going to make everybody happy, because that's just going to make a lot of people annoyed.
Yeah, no, I feel that. So for this year, is there a particular brand that you feel is ascending and making some great moves? It seems to be usually the case each year. There's somebody entering the market, or just like it's, ASICs coming through a couple years ago. They're back, they're taking off. Is there a company that you would say this year is really ascending?
Yeah, I don't know that every one company is really jumping out at me. And I think that like the other way to kind of say that is that I think a lot of people are firing on all cylinders right now. And so like I think we're, as much as I just spent 2 minutes ranting, I do think that we are getting a lot of really good product on the market right now. And so I'm really happy. And right now no one's really jumping out at me. If I were to pick someone, I would say maybe Puma's having a really good year because of like that new aliphatic TPU that they're using in the Fast R2. It's in the DV8 Nitro Elite 3. It's in the DV8 Nitro 3. Like I feel like they're like finally figuring out like their supply chain. People can actually buy the shoes now when they want to buy them, and their race product is finally gotten to the level where I feel like not only can their elites run in them, but non-elites can run in them as well. And so they're one that kind of stand out to me. They've been making a lot of good shoes, but you know, like everyone's been making really good shoes this year.
Mhm.
So like you can't go down the line and tell me a shoe that's not great from any of the brands right now. So it's a really good time to be a runner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been really impressed, and this will go to the next question too. I've been impressed with Mizuno, and I don't know if it's I never know like cadence, stride, midfoot, forefoot. I don't know. I really liked the fuel cell formulation a couple years ago with the Rebel V3 and the SE Trainer One, and this foam's a little bit softer. The Inner Z Light or the other one they use for the Neo Vista, but those shoes just sing well to me. I mean, they're wonderful. Is there a shoe brand? I know you're a forefoot striker that makes shoes that tend to complement forefoot striking better.
I mean, I feel like they all do. That's like been always been the default. And so when I say like, oh, hey, these shoes are really good for heel strikers or midfoot slash heel strikers, then people are like, oh, well, then what are the shoes for the forefoot striker? I'm like all the other ones, and and so that's kind of how that works. There are, I mean, Mizuno has always been kind of that way. Asics used to be very much that way too, and so that's why like I feel like there. I think part of their transition was like, are we ready to leave kind of like that demographic, or leave those like faithful customers behind? Which they haven't really. They still make the Cumulus, they still make the Cayanos, which is a stability shoe as well. But back when Asics had like the Trustic system, which was basically like a Mizuno wave plate, that was a high level of motion control, but also I felt like it really catered towards like more of a heel striker. I think he caters quite a bit to a lot of midfoot and heel strikers in terms of the shoes that they make, and so that's why I tend to not review a lot of Mizuno and a lot of Brooks shoes, is because they don't really speak to me, and I can only make so many running shoe video reviews a year, and so I kind of try to cherry pick on the ones that I think are going to be more exciting.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna turn the light on here. It's funny. There's a
Mhm.
storm rolling in. It's just like I have
Oh,
one
okay.
window in here, and it's just like the
Yeah.
light's gone out. Hold on.
Are you getting the hurricane? Is that the hurricane that's coming in?
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, so I mean it's the effects of it. I mean it
Oh,
went
okay.
and spun through Houston. The power went out downtown in Houston, and we're just catching a little bit of the storm, not too
Okay.
much. Now you probably get asked questions as like the guy on YouTube reviewing shoes by just I can't even imagine what your inbox looks like or the Instagram messages. I get a lot fewer than you for sure, but one question that surfaces a lot more than I would have ever expected is what is the best shoe to walk in that's a running shoe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do get. I mean, I don't get any emails, questions in my email, because my like on my YouTube it's like for emails for business.
Okay.
And so if someone does ask me a question on email, I just delete it, because I don't want to be. I'm bad at answering my work emails, so I can't be flooded. But I answer tons of responses on comments and in DMs and on the chat and the live stream. So I'm available to answer that question. And the main thing that I say is like the flavor of that question that I get is, I'll be talking about a shoe. It could be anything from a max cushion shoe to a race day shoe. And a lot of people think, oh, these are the $300 shoes. They must be so comfortable, So are they great for walking? And I'll say, well, these are race shoes, so no. A lot of times I'm saying like, I don't do a lot of walking in my shoes, and so I actually don't know the answer to that, but I have, I do walk, like I travel through airports and I live in the suburbs. So like, like I walk from my car through the parking lot into the store. There's not a lot of walking in suburbs, but I do some. And I find that the shoes that I love running in are generally not the shoes I love walking or being on my feet all day in. And so I've spent a lot of time over the last year in a non-ironic way talking about the different ways our foot experiences softness. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by soft? We got to talk about how fast are we going. And so like that's like a really absurd question for someone that's like, I just want to know if this $150 shoe is good for standing on my feet all day. I'm a greeter, you know? And it's probably more information than they want, and it makes it, sometimes I have to analyze, am I basically being facetious in this, or maybe am I being a jerk? Because I'm like, how do you answer the question for them? So I do get that question a lot. And I say, for me, if a shoe feels kind of firmer than I'd like to run in and there's a lot of stack height, I'll say it's probably going to be pretty good for standing all day in. But yeah, and it's like, probably a Brooks.
That's
Good.
yeah. Brooks Hyperion Tempo is my default answer. I don't even know if it's right. I
Well,
just say, yeah, Brooks Hyperion Tempo.
I say Ghost. I would
Ghost.
say the
Oh
Brooks
yeah,
Ghost is
yeah.
probably really Ghost is good for that. It's the number one selling running shoe in America, and actually do really enjoy the Brooks Ghost for as a travel shoe because it is really comfortable at the pace of standing and walking. For me, I love it. I don't love running in it. It's okay. I prefer the Ghost Max than the Ghost, but I have experienced it as a walker.
Do you have a best do-it-all shoe that you would recommend?
Yeah, the daily trainers. That's what they're designed for. I got that exact question today. So it was like on the Super Blast. They're like, well, I kind of want one shoe that I'm going to be doing my everyday running and my racing in. Which one? Like, is this going to be good for that? I'm like, first of all, everyday running and racing are very different, and the things that make a shoe good for one are don't make them good for the other. But I think what you're looking for is a do-it-all shoe, and any daily trainer and then any brand is pretty much going to be that. The Super Blast could be that for you, but I would also look at daily trainers like Nova Blast 4, Rebel 4, Mach 6, 1080 13. Like those are all great daily trainers. Those are great do-it-all shoes. The daily trainers.
Awesome. And then I know the definition of a super shoe can, or not a super shoe, but a super trainer can be a little bit murky. How would you define a super trainer?
Super trainer. I don't know what that means.
Okay, yeah.
I don't use that term
Okay.
because all I know about a super trainer is that it's going to be expensive. That's the only thing that I know about a super trainer. It tells me nothing about the shoe. It might be it'd be to me it's as useful as categorizing shoes by price or by color. It's like I guess that's useful. Some people might have a use case for it, but I don't really know what you're supposed to do with the super trainer.
Yeah, because
So,
I've got the Skyward X, and then I also got the Neo Vista, and they were both considered super trainers. But I was like, well, I wouldn't train for a super shoe if this is a super trainer and the Skyward X, even though I do like to ride. But I would pick up the pace in the Neo Vista, so maybe that would be a super trainer. But I don't know. I don't. It's just kind of confusing. So I was just curious if you.
I don't know who started using that term, but I don't like it because it means something different to everybody. Like I was listening to a Doctors of Running podcast one day, and they're like, "Well, this isn't a super trainer because it's not over 40 millimeters." And I'm like, "All right, so you're saying that the SC Trainer 2 is not a super trainer?" I feel like that kind of is squarely in the super trainer category, just because it's at 38 and a half or 38 and not 40 millimeters. I don't really, So
Yeah.
it seems like everyone's using different definitions, and again, it doesn't tell me what the shoe is for. I don't think that the Skyward X and the Neo Vista are for the same thing. I don't think that the Super Blast 2 and name another super trainer and the SC Trainer 2 are for the same thing.
All right. So, lastly, as like personal use case, we make so much noise, or I mean, we talk about shoes on the internet. It's like do shoe reviews, right? And I've heard them described as tires. They're not exactly what makes the difference. They can add a little bit to it. But have you ever finished a marathon that was like a PR attempt, and you were like, I could have gone faster if I had different shoes?
Not that it was a PR attempt, but when I wore a shoe that was not like classically a racer. And so the two examples that I would refer to would be I ran CIM a couple of years ago. I don't remember what year. I ran that in the first Super Blast, and then I also ran Boston in the Primex Strung 2.
That one's right
And
there
so
with the peg. Okay, like as far as like keep that in your back pocket. You're like, I
yeah,
ran a whole marathon in this shoe.
yeah. And so those are two shoes where they're great long run shoes. And that's kind of a term that I prefer over super trainer because it distinguishes long run versus like a max cushion shoe. Whereas like some super trainers are what people consider super trainers are just max cushion shoes, if you ask me. Anyway, so I feel like those are both shoes that are great for long runs even with some marathon effort miles in them as well. But for a variety of other reasons, you might not want to actually race in them. And in both of those situations, I finished the race and I was like, oh, I ran well. I think I ran about the same time in each of those. I think I ran around 304 in both of those marathons in those different shoes. And I was like, yeah. At the end, I was like, I wish I had something with a little bit more pep to it. And so in the case of the Super Blast, I was like, I sure was missing carbon in the last 10K. And in the case of the Primex Strung 2, or Primex 2 Strung, that has two layers of the two carbon plates in it. And it wasn't that I was missing the carbon. It was like so much shoe. I wanted something that was lighter and that didn't have quite so much in the forefoot. I wanted something that could help me turn over a little bit faster, especially in that last 10K. And so that's when I felt like, a more purpose-built shoe definitely would have made a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got over 500 miles in my Primex Strungs, and I love them. I think they could go to 1,000. Probably.
That's wild.
So
That's wild.
yeah, I've never taken a shoe past 500. I mean, this one and another one. Usually like I've heard you say the max you used to go to is about 300, and that's kind of like where the ones that I like the most at 300. I'm like, okay, that's good. Not trying to get hurt out here. So
okay, this is awkward. I'm really new to this whole interview thing, and I guess I need to work on my outros. All right, now I'm going to put two videos up here at the end as promised. The first one's going to be the first half of the Kofuzi interview if you have not seen it. The second one, if you're new to the channel, it's called Breaking 3. It'll give you an idea of what we're all about here at Midlife Runner. It's an absolute banger. Enjoy.
Keep the same energy. Work on being better when I'm 70. Your drip is just a water spring. I drip different, just the 7 C's.